Alright, what's up guys? So here's just a quick demo of the iPhone game that we're going to be creating. At the beginning here, you're greeted with a menu or a main menu, and you have how many coins you collected during the levels up to the left, the highest score up to the right. You can link your social buttons down here if you'd like. And then you have three main buttons in the middle for actually playing the game. The shop, which you can buy different guns, which I'll show you in a minute, and then quit, which would just quit your game. So we'll go into play. And the point of this game is it's pretty basic, but it's going to actually teach us a lot of things as we go along. But the point is to move our cannon back and forth and basically shoot down each one of these missiles. And if we let the missile either hit our cannon or this ground down here, you can see we lose health up here. And when our health is at 0, the game over screen is shown, and we have our score right here, and we have 2 buttons, so we can either retry the level or go to the main menu. And for now I'm going to go to the menu so we can look at the shop. And inside of here it's just a basic cannon shop, so we just have different upgradable cannons, and you can see they have cost. So this one's 750, and if we have 90 coins for example and we click on it, it will say that we don't have enough coins. And each one of these cannons down here is upgradable. So the fire rate, for example, you can upgrade for 500, the damage for 750, and so on. So like I said, it's pretty basic, but it's a good game to get going with, and let's just hop right into it. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to open up Unity, and we're just going to create a new project, and we're going to change the type to 2D, and I'm also going to just name it to something like iPhone game demo. And for now I'm not going to add any of the standard assets, so I'm just going to create the project. Okay, so as I was finishing up there, I'm just going to quickly talk about what we're going to cover in this first video here. I think we're going to look at using our sprites. So we're going to import our sprites, and I create a folder for that so you guys can download that if you'd like. And I just found them on the internet, but I'll put that in the description. And then after we create our sprites, so our cannon and our bullet, excuse me, we're going to look at actually moving our player back and forth. And then thirdly, to finish off this video, we're going to start firing our missiles from our cannon. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to go to my desktop, and I'm going to drag in that sprites folder. And like I said, I'll leave a link in the description box if you want to download the sprites that I'm using here, or you can just use any sprites that you find online. So I'm going to go into the sprites here, and I already have them separated here, so it might be a little bit challenging at first to understand how they're organized, but I'm going to go into shooters here, and we have this sprite sheet. So if we take a look at it and we click on it in the inspector and we just open it in the Sprite Editor, you can see it has 15 different guns here, and that's just how I picked the 4 ones that I showed in the beginning. And all I did is I just drug boxes around each sprite to create the 4 different sprites, and then I applied it up here, and then that'll give you this slide over here. So that's how I was able to get all of these 4 sprites. And then these 4 icons that have a colored background of the cannon, those are just for the shop images, and those were just simple screenshots that I took. And I think that's it for the sprites for this video. We're going to look at the other ones later on, but oh, and also I have this background here, so I'm going to go into the scene. I'm just going to drag this background in, and I'm just going to expand it to the length of the camera. And if you go into the game scene, now you have this nice background here. Excuse me. And then I think what we're going to do is I'm going to drag in this ground right here, and I'm going to go into the sprite render component and just order the layer in front of the background. So I'm going to make it 1, and I'm going to drag it down, and I just want just like that much of the top showing, and then we can just expand it like this. Alright, that's good enough for now. So now we have our basic grounds here, and we're going to click on our ground object. I'm actually going to give it a tag. So you click on this, object, you go under the tag and you click add tag, and you're going to create a new one, and then it's going to call it tag or ground, and then click on ground again and just give it that tag. And now we need some kind of collider for our cannon to sit on. So I'm going to give it a box collider 2D, and you can see here now we have this green box that's sitting around our sprite, and it's sitting a little bit too high or above our sprite on the top. So I'm just going to come over here on the offset and just drag it down a bit, just something like that, so it's sitting flush with the top and the bottom. And let's see how that looks. Still looks pretty good. And I think we can add our cannon now. So I'm going to go into the shooters and I'm going to grab just our basic single fire cannon and slide him down here. And the reason you can't see him again is because of this ordering and layer. So I'll give him a layer of 1. And I'm also going to change the transform, I think, to something like 2 by 2 or 1.5 by 1.5. Alright, so that looks pretty good. I'm just going to rename them single cannon. And we might as well just add the box collider while we're at it. And click on our scene view and let's see how the box collider looks. And yeah, it looks pretty good. Okay, so now we're actually going to get our cannon to move. So in order to do that, we need to create a script. So I'm just going to right click down here and go to create C# script, and I'm just going to call it move cannon, and I'm going to open it up. And you can use any text editor. Basically, I just like using Visual Studio, but you can use any, like I said. Alright, so now that we're inside of our code here, it's pretty easy to get our object to go back and forth. And for now, I'm going to set it up so we can either use the arrow keys or A and D to go back and forth. But in a future video, we're going to look at how we can actually implement a cross-platform system so we can get it working on the iPhone. But for now, we're just going to come down into the update here, and I'm going to create a new vector3 variable. And I'm just going to call it movement. And it's going to be equal to a new vector3. Now a vector is it's basically a set of coordinates that's x, y, and z. So the first one is x, and that is the one we're going to go, or that's the one we want to use to go back and forth. So we're going to say input dot get axis, and it's going to be horizontal, and then comma 0 on the y, and also 0 on the x, or on the z, excuse me. And make sure you spell this horizontal exactly like this for now. When we go back into Unity here in a moment, I'll show you exactly where this comes from and how you can change it. But for now, spell it like this. And now we can say transform dot position plus equals movement times time dot delta time times move speed. And we don't have this move speed variable yet, so I'm going to come up here to the top. And I'm just going to say public float move speed, and I'm going to give it a default of something like 8, and that will get rid of the error here. So basically all this is doing is every frame inside of this update method, it's creating this vector3 variable called movement, and that movement variable is equal to the value of the horizontal axis on the x, and that might be a little confusing, but I'll show you in a minute, and 0 on the y and 0 on the z. And then it's just taking the transform position of our game object, and it's adding movement times time dot delta time. And the reason we want to add or multiply times dot delta time is depending on the frame rate, you want to keep a steady increase or decrease. And then lastly, a move speed, just to give it some kind of fluctuation in how fast it goes. So now if we actually save this, and we can go back into Unity and let it think down here for a second. Now come over here and click on our cannon, and we're just going to add that script. So move cannon, And if we hit run, now we should be able to go back and forth with the arrow keys and also A and D. And if you can see here, the problem now is we can actually go off the screen. So depending, and there's some kind of flickering going on, but I think that's mainly because of the layering of the sprites. But depending on what kind of game you use, you could either have the camera follow this player, but for this it's going to be a stationary camera, so we're actually going to clamp the minimum and the maximum X values of our player. So that sounds a little confusing, but it's pretty simple. And to do that, we're just going to go back inside of our move Canon script again. So I'm going to come down here inside of Visual Studio, and all we need to do here is we can say something like so we can come up to the top here and we can say public float min x is equal to something like -8, and public float max x is equal to 8. Now we can come downside our update method here, and we can do an if statement. So if transform dot cap locks is on dot position dot x is greater than max x, then we can say transform dot position is equal to new vector 2 and max x, and then transform dot position dot y, and then we want to say else if transform dot position dot x is less than min x, then transform dot position dot x is equal to new vector 2 min x transform dot position dot y. And actually, sorry about that, delete the dot x here. So basically what this is doing, it's saying if the position of our cannon, the x position of our cannon is greater than x, then it's going to set the position back to x on the 8 and then whatever our y position was, so then we can move it back the other way. It won't let us go any farther, and same for the minimum value here. So now if we go and save that and we go back into Unity, let it think for a moment here, and when we run it, you should see we can only go to the right 8 units and then to the left 8 units. So let's run it. So you can go over, and now we're stopped here to the right. I'm still holding in the button, and same with the left. And I think that's pretty good. You can adjust that to whatever screen size you like. You can adjust it right here in the inspector now. Since we made those variables public, you don't have to go back inside the code here to do that. Okay, so now I think the only thing we need to do now for this video is we're actually going to look at firing some kind of missile upward. Okay, and there's really two ways of shooting inside of Unity that I can really think of. The first is a prefab type method where you instantiate or create the game object at the position that you're standing at or at a certain fire point, and then you just adjust its velocity in the direction that you want it to fire. Or secondly, a raycast, which is more common in like a first-person shooter, where it's an instant hit. It shoots out a line with a given distance, and then when it hits a target, it returns information about that target. But for our case here, we're going to use the prefab method. So first, we're going to go into our sprites folder here, and I'm going to go into bullets, and let's see here, bullets, and I have this bullet sprite right here. Okay, so actually I think, yeah, so the bullet, it was just by itself, so I don't need to do any adjusting to that sprite here, but what I will do is I'm going to drag it into our inspector or our hierarchy window over here on the left. And as you can see right now, we need to adjust the layer, so give it a 1, and it's way too big, so I'm going to change the transform. Let's cut it in, let's just try this, and let's go 0.2 actually. Okay, so 0.2 looks pretty good. Yeah, I think 0.2 looks good. And I'm also going to give it a rigid body, 2D. And I'm going to turn the gravity scale off, so I'm going to give it a gravity scale of 0. You could leave that whatever you would like. If you want the bullets to come back down for whatever reason, you could leave that or even turn that up, but I don't want them to come back down. So I'm going to put that to 0. And yeah, I think that's all we need to do for this bullet. So I'm actually going to drag and drop into our assets here, and that's going to create a prefab. So now we can delete this bullet, and this is going to be the bullet that we're going to fire. So I'm going to go inside of our move cannon script here, and I'm going to come down here and I'm going to create a new method. So public void shoot. So if you think about it logically, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to instantiate or create the game object at a certain position. So let's first get a reference to that game object. So public game object the bullet, and I'm going to save that. And also I'm going to give a public game object fire point. Now we don't have this fire point created inside of Unity yet, but we will in just a minute. So we're going to come down here inside of shoot, and now I'm going to say if input dot get button down, and I'm going to say jump. So now I'm going to save it here. I'm going to go into Unity quick because I want to show you, I forgot, I want to show you where these horizontal and jump come from. So go back into Unity here. So if you just go to edit, project settings, and input, you'll get this input manager over here in the inspector, and just click on this drop down here, and you can see this is where we got those names from. So horizontal right here and jump right here. So if we click the drop down on this horizontal, for example, you can see the name and then the buttons associated with that. So the negative button is the left arrow, the positive is the right arrow, and then the alternative negative and positive buttons are just the A and D. And the reason we have 2 of them here is this one is for a joystick, so we're going to be using this one in a later video to get mobile controls, but it's really not that hard. So yeah, that's basically where we've been getting those names from. So now I'm going to go back inside of here, and now we're going to create, so instantiate, and the object we want to fire or create is the bullet, and now we want to give it the position where we're going to create it at. So it's going to be fire point dot transform dot position, and I'm going to say fire point dot transform dot rotation. So the shoot method so far, excuse me, what it's doing is it's checking if we're pressing the jump button, which in this case the jump button is set up for the spacebar. So if we're pressing the spacebar, then it's going to create a bullet object, and it's going to create it at the position of our fire point and with the rotation of our fire point. So I'm going to save that, go back into Unity, and give it a minute to think here. And now what we need to do is we're actually going to add a fire point to the end of our cannon right here. So to do that, we're going to just click on our single cannon and right click and create an empty child, and I'm going to call it fire point, and just drag it to the tip of the barrel, so somewhere like that is good, and that's all we need for that. So now we can actually click on the single cannon and drag in our fire point, and now we can drag in our bullet prefab, and if we run the game now and we press the space bar, it would help sorry about that, it would help if we actually call this shoot method. Right now it's not being called, so we're just going to call it in the update. So shoot, like that, save it, go back into Unity. Okay, so now when I press it, you can see it's creating the bullets at the position of the fire point, and that's exactly what we want. So the only thing left to do is add some kind of upward velocity to the bullet. And to add velocity to it, it's pretty easy. There's a couple ways to do it, but I think the easiest is just to go back into the move cannon here, and we want to create a reference to this created object. So I'm just going to say game object, and I'm going to call it just geo. So what this is doing is it's creating a game object variable called geo, and it's just equal to the object or the bullet that we create. So now I want to say geo, and I want to get a component on that game object. So get component and rigid body 2D. And now I just want to add, or excuse me, I want to change or adjust the velocity of it. And the velocity of it is just going to be equal to transform.position dot sorry, not transform.position, transform.up, and I'm going to multiply something by, let's actually give it a variable, so bullet speed, and let's go to the top here and just define that. So public float bullet speed is equal to 10, and just save that. So like I said again, what all this is doing is it's creating a variable game object, and it's getting a component on each one of those game objects, which we added that rigid body earlier, and it's setting its velocity to an upward velocity times this speed right here. So let's go into Unity and we can test it out, and hopefully that's it for this first part. Okay, so as you can see, we're now running the game, and we can go left and right, and when we fire, you can see the bullets go up. And yeah, I think that's good. If we want to get particular, actually, we could go inside of here and we could just destroy these game objects, let's say something like after 5 seconds. So what this is going to do is it's going to destroy each bullet, but it's going to wait 5 seconds to do so. And you might want to do that just so you don't get cluttered with hundreds and hundreds of bullets that you start firing off. They'll just keep deleting themselves after 5 seconds. And in the next video, we're going to actually look at hitting objects with our bullets, so they might actually destroy themselves. But we're going to run it one more time just to show you that that's working. So I'm going to shoot a bullet. It shows up over here as a bullet clone. It's going to wait 5 seconds, and then it's going to be deleted. Alright guys, that's it for this first video of the series. In the next video, we're going to look at implementing our enemy, which is that UFO, and we're going to have him shoot down missiles to try to attack us. In the third video, we're going to look at adding UI and our health. And then in the fourth video, we're going to look at adding the menu, the game over screen, and also our shop. So thanks guys for watching. Subscribe, turn the post notifications on, and I think I'm going to be dropping part 2 of this video tomorrow, so stay tuned for that. Peace.